Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Moerman's new wide body channel handle. It's still their Accelerator 2.0, but it's made for wide body. So right now I've got the Ettore super channel in there with some Ettore soft rubber. And no reviews complete without a little bit of a side-by-side, so you kind of know what to measure it against. So I've got this Unger, everybody has these Unger Ninja, or at least they used to be really popular. The Unger Ninja handles, the Ergotex. And then I've got an old Legend. It's got the beveled edges there. I don't use this very much. I've got it. It's sturdy for people who like it. I've never been a really big fan of wide body channel in particular. I mean, if you've watched my channel any time now, you know that the Moerman Accelerator 2.0 with the Liquidator 3.0 channel, that's my go-to. Like every day, I'm always using the Squeegee. I'll play around with other ones for fun, but this is the one if I need to get work done. It gets me done quick. So with that said, let's look at the release on this. The Ninja, you have the little clamp right here that comes loose, and then you can kind of pry it and it comes off. So this one's a little bit different, maybe a little bit more intuitive. You just simply crank that up and it falls out. Now it holds nice and firm. You almost don't feel like it's going in there. I'm putting, it takes quite a bit of pressure to get it to slide. If I'm using the Unger, these are adjustable. You can tighten that clamp, but it also slides. So it's not like if you're losing anything there. The other channel, they all clamp down similarly. Maybe Sorbo would be the other comparison that I don't have. I've never been a big fan of the Sorbo handles, and we'll get to why, the pivoting. So I love channels that can swivel. The Unger one, unlocks here too. And so it's not as conducive, but it does swivel. It's nice if you need to hit it at an angle and you have that bent, so that if you're using a pole and you want to do straight pulls, it works for that. You can tighten that or loosen it. I don't like having it loose on a pole with the Unger, the Ninja handle, but that's why this is such a groundbreaking tool. The Moerman Accelerator handles swivel very nicely, so you can use them on a pole or just as you're going. It's just a fantastic little extension. It takes some getting used to because it's so fluid, but once you do get used to it, you just fly. It's like cutting through butter. With that said, you can use any of the wide body channels with this, and they all clamp down nicely. There's a little bit of a rubber embed in there, and so that does help hold it firm, like I said earlier. I'm going to go show you how to use these. Again, I've never been the biggest fan of the wide body channels, but the handle, if you use the channels, the handle alone is well worth the investment. And I'm saying that because I love Moerman handles. If you don't like the Moerman Liquidator channels because they're fidgety for you, completely understandable. These are much more heavy. They're more rigid. The wide body channels are ideal for storefronts, commercial glass where you have larger panes of glass. If you need to do straight pulls, if you have a rookie, somebody who's learning and you don't have time to really train them for really good fanning, the wide body channels are very forgiving for straight pulls. A little bit more finesse to obviously fan with them because they're bigger, they're bulkier, they're more rigid. So, but that all, everything has a give and a take. I like the fluidity of the Liquidator channels because they're so light, they almost accent every single movement that you make. So it's like you breathe and it's going to fidget. So you have to have absolute control to use these. This, on the other hand, if you twitch while you're moving, this is so big and bulky that it's not going to respond. So it's not precise. This is precise. The Liquidator channels are very precise and very accurate. Wide body channels, kind of the opposite. So, which is beneficial in some regards. Bigger sheets of glass where you got to move swiftly, they'll do a great job. So with that said, let's get into it. So I've been testing the setup for a little while now, and honestly what stands out the most, just like the original Accelerator handle, but especially with this wide body version, is how well it can actually perform on the pole. The balance feels right. The swivel lets you stay locked in without having to fight the angle of it. And if you do storefronts or high, harder to reach glass, it's a game changer. So most handles that swivel can either feel too stiff and rigid or too loose. But this one just hits that sweet spot where it's just right. You can also lock it into place so that if you want to do straight pulls from a pull, works like butter. Then if you're holding it in your hand, it's also equally smooth and fluid and precise. Everything you need from a Moerman handle. It's my favorite handle by far for regular channels. Now this one, if I was to use wide body channels more often, would be my go-to. So now, like I mentioned earlier, wide body channels really shine in those commercial settings, really big sheets of glass where you're making bigger motions, bigger movements, and maybe even using like a 24 or 36-inch squeegee. So straight pulls also very great for that. So if you're mainly doing residential work, you might just want to stick with the normal accelerator handle that Moerman makes, also my favorite. But for storefronts and restaurants or office glass, if you've been using wide body channels in the past, this is where it's at. It's a game changer for wide body channels. You can move a little bit faster and keep straight lines, whatever you need, with very little chatter, just as all around a solid handle. Now, the other great application for the squeegee is that if you've got newer techs on your team, wide body channels are a lot more forgiving, and you can have them doing straight pulls all day long with very little training, and this will look clean and professional. So these channels are less sensitive for precision, like I mentioned earlier, and they're not as easy to fan with, but they're a great training tool. I've used a couple of wide body channels before, not a ton of them. With that said, what is your favorite wide body channel and what ones would you recommend for me to experiment with just to play around with? Drop it in the comments and maybe I'll be able to do a side-by-side comparison in the future. Who knows? But if you've been on the fence about whether or not to buy the Moerman Accelerator 2.0 for wide body channels, I highly recommend it, especially if you already use wide body channels. There's a link in the description. Go ahead and buy one today.